All right, let's talk about one of the biggest, boldest, and honestly craziest educational tech rollouts in history. We're going way back to look at the digital education revolution, that ambitious plan to stick a laptop in front of every single high school student. But to really get what happened, we're not going to start with the politicians. Nope, we're starting on the front lines. You know this line, right? It's the universal cry of every tech support person on the planet, and it is the perfect place for our story to begin. Our guides through this whole saga are the technology support officers, the TSOs. They were the unsung heroes who had to keep this entire revolution from falling apart, one reboot at a time. But before we get to the wild stories from the tech support trenches, we have to rewind. We gotta go back to the very beginning, because before all the chaos, there was this grand revolutionary idea. So, picture this. It's 2007. Prime Minister Kevin Rudd makes the education revolution, this massive election promise. The vision? It was huge, but simple. Let's close the digital divide and drag our schools into the 21st century. By 2009, the first wave of laptops hit the desks of Year 9 students. And the goal was super ambitious, a laptop for every single senior student by 2011. And listen, this was no small-time experiment. The government threw an absolutely staggering amount of money at this. We're talking $2.4 billion nationally between 2008 and 2012. This was a massive bet that technology could be the great equalizer for a whole new generation of students. So the money's there, the big vision is set. Now for the really, really hard part. How do you actually get laptops into schools? This national dream was about to become one of the biggest logistical puzzles in the history of Australian education. The scale of this thing is just mind-boggling. Over 600,000 laptops were handed out to students in New South Wales public schools alone. Just try to imagine the logistics, the shipping, the unboxing, the setup, just the sheer volume of plastic and silicone flooding into classrooms everywhere. And what were these magical machines? Well, they weren't exactly high-end gaming rigs, let me tell you. They were humble workhorses. Certain models became totally iconic. You had the tiny little Lenovo S10e netbook that kicked the whole thing off, and later these tougher, more rugged models that were actually built to survive the absolute chaos of a school backpack. So how on earth do you manage 600,000 different devices without going completely insane? Well, you don't. You make them all the same. And that was the job of the SOE, the Standard Operating Environment. The best way to think about it is like a digital uniform. Every single laptop had the exact same lockdown software, the same security settings. It was the only way to make this massive fleet manageable. Okay, so you've got the laptops, you've got the identical software, but we all know what happens next, right? Things break all the time. And this is where our heroes enter the story, the technology support officers. These TSOs were right there in the schools, the frontline soldiers of this whole digital revolution. And this, my friends, is where the story gets really good. We're now diving headfirst into the daily life of a TSO. It was a world of unbelievable excuses, bizarre hardware failures, and a whole lot of creative, on-the-fly problem solving. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up. Can you imagine getting a help ticket for a laptop that smells like dessert? This quote from Sean Piper just perfectly captures the weird, wonderful, and yeah, often sticky problems these TSOs had to figure out every single day. And the excuses they heard? Oh, they were legendary. Marilyn McSporn shared this one, which is an absolute all-timer. It wasn't just about spilled drinks and cracked screens. TSOs heard every story imaginable, from pets chewing on power cords to, well, to this. But beyond all the physical damage, there was the one single biggest headache, especially in the early days, the Wi-Fi. A lot of schools just weren't built for hundreds of devices trying to get online all at once. This quote from Brandon Belford, that was the daily reality for pretty much every TSO and student in the country. And you know, it wasn't all just funny stories. Sometimes the problems were genuinely serious. You had real hardware failures like batteries swelling up or, as noted here, even catching fire. These were the issues TSOs had to handle safely and very, very quickly. So with all this going on, what was the ultimate fix? The TSO's magic wand. This quote from Craig Wheatley became the mantra. For almost any software problem you could think of, a virus, a corrupted file, a forgotten password, the solution was to re-image it. This process, also known as a bare metal recovery, basically wiped the laptop clean and put a fresh copy of that digital uniform, the SOE, back on. It was the silver bullet that solved almost everything. Now, it's super easy to get caught up in the hardware and all the hilarious repair stories. But we've got to remember, the DER was meant to be a whole educational ecosystem. It was about fundamentally changing how teachers taught and how students learned. Of course, you can't just drop all this new tech on teachers and say, good luck. They needed help. And the solution was something called laptop wraps. These were basically prepackaged, ready-to-go digital lesson plans. They were stuffed with videos, quizzes, and resources, all lined up with the curriculum. A teacher could just grab a wrap and have a tech-heavy lesson ready in minutes. And where did teachers find all these great resources? On a platform called Taily, the Teaching and Learning Exchange. You can think of it as an essential digital library for everything a teacher might need. From the laptop wraps to videos and other materials, it was the content hub that really powered the classroom side of this whole revolution. Naturally, when you give hundreds of thousands of teenagers open access to the internet, safety becomes a massive concern. The official word from the top, from the department CIO, was that their filter, a system called Blue Code, was unbreakable. Now, that sounds less like a statement of fact and more like a challenge. A challenge that, as any TSO could tell you, students were very, very happy to take on. Okay, so after all the money, all the effort, all the reimagining, and all the chocolate-scented, roof-of-the-car riding, broken laptops, we have to ask the big question. Did any of it actually work? What is the real lasting legacy of this massive experiment? Well, if you look at the official evaluations, the answer was yeah. In a lot of really important ways, it was a huge success. It absolutely bridged the digital divide for hundreds of thousands of kids. It made one-to-one technology in the classroom totally normal. It measurably improved the tech skills of both students and teachers. And it built this incredibly robust statewide tech support system from the ground up. Eventually, the federal funding dried up around 2013, and the whole program had to evolve. The free laptops stopped coming every year, and schools started shifting to a bring-your-own-device model. But here's the key. The legacy was so much more important than the hardware. What stayed behind was the upgraded Wi-Fi, the management systems, and, most importantly, an entire generation of teachers and students who are now completely comfortable using technology in their daily lives. The DNA of the DER was here to stay. And that kind of leaves us with this final thought, doesn't it? Was the digital education revolution just a chaotic, expensive experiment with way too many broken screens and firewall workarounds? Or was it the messy, complicated, but absolutely essential foundation that every single digital classroom, every online lesson, and every tech-savvy student is standing on today? What do you think?